My sister posted on social media that I stole her house. My parents took me to court. I won the case and now they've lost their own house. My name is Helena, I'm 32 years old, and I never imagined that the most important achievement of my life would become the trigger for the complete destruction of my family. When I opened the registered letter that Thursday afternoon, my hands trembled so much I almost dropped the envelope on the floor. It was a legal notification. My own parents were suing me for the house I had bought with my own money. 7 years of savings. 7 years of sacrifices no one saw. Of sacrifices no one applauded, of sleepless nights working on extra projects to accumulate every penny. And now, there it was, a lawsuit claiming the house belonged to my younger sister, Melissa. I had to read it 3 times for the words to make any sense. Even then, they didn't. How could they? I had every receipt, every bank statement, every transfer receipt from the last 7 years. There wasn't a single dollar in that purchase that hadn't come from my own effort. I called my father immediately, with the letter still trembling in my hand. "Dad, what is this?" My voice came out higher than I intended. "Why are you suing me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I heard my mother saying something in the background, but I couldn't make out the words. "Helena," my father's voice was cold, distant, as if he were talking to a stranger, "you know very well why. That house was supposed to be Melissa's. It always was." I felt as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet. "What are you talking about?" I managed to say, despite the lump in my throat. "What house was supposed to be Melissa's? I bought this house with MY money, with 7 years of work." "You knew your grandmother left a fund for Melissa's first house," he continued, completely ignoring what I had said. "And you used that money to buy yours." "What fund?" I was practically shouting now. "Dad, I never used any money from Grandma. I didn't even know that fund existed. I can prove every penny I spent. Don't complicate things, Helena. You've always been the difficult daughter. Your sister needs that house more than you do. She's starting her life, has plans, dreams. And I don't." The question came out as a strangled whisper. He hung up on me. I stood there, in the middle of my newly decorated living room, holding the phone as if it might explode at any moment. The house around me, which just 2 weeks ago brought me so much joy and pride, suddenly seemed unreal. As if I were living a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. To understand how I got here, I need to go back in time. I need to explain how my family always functioned, or rather, dysfunctioned. I grew up being the responsible daughter, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who got good grades without needing private tutors, the one who cleaned her own room, washed her own dishes, and never, ever asked for anything beyond what was strictly necessary. Melissa, 3 years younger than me, was the complete opposite. She was the daughter who needed special attention. The one who had artistic sensitivity. The one who saw the world differently, and therefore couldn't be held to the same standards as me. When I was 15 and Melissa was 12, I remember placing first in the state mathematics competition. I came home with the trophy, excited to show my parents. My mother, Denise, looked briefly at the trophy and said, "That's nice, dear. Now go help your sister with her math homework. She's having difficulty and you're so good at it." My father, Eduardo, didn't even look up from his newspaper. 2 weeks later, Melissa received an honorable mention in a school drawing contest. My parents threw a party. Literally. They invited uncles, aunts, cousins, neighbors. My mother made 3 types of cake. My father hung Melissa's drawing on the living room wall, framed. My trophy stayed on the shelf in my room, behind some books. It was at that moment, at 15 years old, that I learned a fundamental lesson. In my family, I didn't matter in the same way my sister mattered. And there was nothing I could do to change that. So I stopped trying. I focused on being self-sufficient, on not needing them, on building a life where I didn't depend on anyone's approval or recognition. I studied, worked, saved. I went to civil engineering school on a full scholarship. I got a well-paid internship in my 3rd year. I was hired permanently before I even graduated. Meanwhile, Melissa tried 3 different colleges without finishing any. First, it was interior design, which she abandoned in the 2nd semester because the professors didn't understand her creative vision. Then she tried advertising, but gave up because the environment was too competitive and toxic. Lastly, she tried visual arts, but stopped attending classes after 6 months because the academic structure was killing her artistic spontaneity. My parents paid for everything. Every enrollment, every tuition, every material. And never, not once, did they demand any kind of result or commitment from her. When I tried to talk to my mother about this, she looked at me as if I had suggested something absurd. Helena, your sister is different from you. She needs time to find her way. Not everyone is born knowing exactly what they want from life like you. As if I had been born knowing. As if I hadn't spent nights awake at 17, terrified about the future, trying to figure out which path to follow. The difference is that I didn't have the option to give up. I didn't have a safety net. I needed to succeed. At 25, I got my first significant promotion. I went from junior engineer to mid-level, with a considerable salary increase. That's when I made the decision. I was going to buy my own house. Not a rented apartment, not a shared studio. A real house. A place that would be completely, unquestionably mine. I created a detailed spreadsheet. I calculated how much I would need to save per month to be able to make a decent down payment in 3 years. I cut all superfluous expenses. No dinners out, no new clothes, no trips. Every extra penny went straight to the savings account. 3 years turned into 7 because, well, life happens. I had to change cars when my old one broke down for good. I had a medical emergency that consumed a good part of my savings. I helped my friend Carla when she went through a difficult divorce and needed a place to stay for a few months. But I continued. Persistent. Disciplined. Focused. Melissa, during those same 7 years, lived with my parents. For free. While discovering herself. She started selling crafts online, then gave up. She opened a fashion blog, then abandoned it. She tried to be a digital influencer, but didn't have the patience for the consistency that required. My parents paid for everything. And somehow, I was the selfish one in the family for not helping my sister more. You have a good job, Helena, my mother would say whenever the subject came up. You could help Melissa. Pay for a course for her, I don't know. You know, she has potential, she just needs an opportunity. I was 28 years old and had already given opportunities, more times than I could count. I had paid for 3 different online courses that Melissa never completed. I had gotten her an interview at a design company, but she didn't show up because she woke up without energy that day. I had lent money that was never returned. Eventually, I learned to say no. And I became the cold sister for it. When I finally gathered the necessary amount for the down payment on the house, it was as if an enormous weight had been lifted off my shoulders. 7 years. More than 2,500 days of discipline, sacrifice, and determination. I found the perfect house in a quiet neighborhood, 20 minutes from my work. It wasn't a mansion, but it was spacious enough for me. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large kitchen with a window overlooking a small backyard garden. It even had a covered service area where I could put my washing machine and still have space for a small workbench. The day I signed the contract was one of the happiest of my life. I left the real estate office practically floating. I called Carla immediately. I did it, I said, and my voice was choked with emotion. Carla, I did it. The house is mine. She screamed with joy on the other end of the line. We agreed to have a barbecue housewarming the following weekend. Then I called my parents to give them the news. I don't know why I still expected some kind of genuine enthusiasm, but a part of me, that 15-year-old child who still kept the math trophy in her room, wanted them to be proud. Hi, Mom. I have great news. I was smiling when I said this. What is it, dear? I bought a house. I closed the deal today. It's beautiful, Mom. You have to see it. It has 3 bedrooms and a garden and... Oh. Her voice became strange. That's good, Helena. The enthusiasm in my voice began to wither. You don't seem very excited. No, I am, she said, but the tone was mechanical. It's just... Well, it's a big house, isn't it? 3 bedrooms. Yes. Why? Nothing. It's just that. Well, you live alone. It seems like a lot of space for just one person. I felt a familiar pang of irritation. Mom, I worked 7 years for this. 7 years saving every penny. Please just be happy for me. I am happy, Helena. But she wasn't. I could hear it in her voice. Your father wants to talk to you. There was a noise of the phone being passed from hand to hand. Helena, my father's voice was carefully neutral. Your mother told me about the house. Yes, Dad. I'm very happy. It was 3 bedrooms, right? He interrupted me. Yes. Was that with the money you saved from work? The question had a strange, almost accusatory tone. Of course it was, Dad. What other money would it be? Just confirming. There was a pause. Your grandmother left a fund to help you and your sister with your first houses. Did you know that? I frowned. No, I didn't know. But I didn't use any money from Grandma. I only used my salary. Are you sure about that, Helena? Because that fund exists, and now you bought a house, and your sister still has nothing. My stomach began to churn. Dad, I didn't use any inheritance money. I didn't even know that existed. I have all the receipts from the last 7 years. I can show every deposit I made. No need to get defensive, he said, and there was clear reproach in his tone. I'm just trying to understand the situation. There's nothing to understand. I was starting to lose patience. I worked, saved, and bought a house. Why is this a problem? It's not a problem, Helena. I just think you could have consulted the family before making such a big decision. After all, there are family resources involved. But I didn't use family resources. I practically screamed. He hung up. I stood there, holding the phone, feeling a cold anger spread through my chest. It was always like this. Always. Anything good that happened to me somehow turned into something that hurt Melissa, and I was to blame for it. In the following days, I tried to ignore the strange conversation with my parents. I was too busy anyway, organizing the move, buying furniture, planning how to decorate each room. Carla helped me choose curtains. My coworker, Rodrigo, lent me tools to assemble some furniture. It was Rodrigo who was with me at the house when my phone rang. It was a Friday night. We were assembling a bookshelf in the living room and laughing about how terrible we were at following instructions. Hello. I answered without looking at who it was. Helena. It was Melissa. She never called me. We need to talk. All the light mood of the night evaporated instantly. Melissa? What happened? You know very well what happened. Her voice was loaded with accusation. You bought the house that was supposed to be mine. Rodrigo noticed the change in my face and gestured, asking if I wanted privacy. I nodded yes, and he discreetly went out to the kitchen. What are you talking about? My voice was tense. The house, Helena. The house that Grandma left money for me to buy. You used that money and bought it for yourself. Melissa, for God's sake, I didn't use any money from Grandma. I didn't even know that money existed. I bought it with my own salary. Liar. She spat the word. You were always Grandma's favorite. Always. She obviously left more money for you, and you used it to buy a huge house while I'm still living with our parents. Melissa, you're living with our parents because you chose not to work. Because you dropped out of 3 colleges. Because you never. Oh, of course. She interrupted me, with that victim tone she had perfected over the years. Of course you're going to throw that in my face. You're so perfect, right, Helena? Always doing everything right. Always being the model daughter. I never said I'm perfect. You stole my house. She was crying now. That house was supposed to be mine, and you knew it. Grandma wanted me to have a house first, because you already earn well, already have a career, already have everything. I felt tears of frustration burn my eyes. Melissa, listen to what you're saying. Please listen. I didn't use Grandma's money. I can prove it. I have 7 years of bank statements. I can show every penny I saved. I don't want to see your fake papers. She shouted. I want my house back. And she hung up. I stood there, in the middle of my living room, surrounded by moving boxes and half-assembled furniture, feeling as if the world had turned upside down. Rodrigo came back from the kitchen with 2 glasses of water. Hey, he said gently. Are you okay? I wasn't. But I tried to smile anyway. It's just family drama. He handed me one of the glasses and sat on the sofa next to me. Want to talk about it? And then, for the first time, I told someone outside the family how things really were. I told about childhood, about Melissa always being the priority, about the 7 years saving, about the absurd accusations. Rodrigo listened to everything in silence, and when I finished, he shook his head. This is insane, Helena. You know that, right? That it's completely insane. I know, I whispered. But it's my family. Family doesn't do this, he said firmly. Family doesn't accuse you of stealing something you achieved with your own effort. I wanted to believe him. But a part of me, that part that grew up always being the second choice, wondered if maybe I really had done something wrong. 2 days later, on a Sunday morning, I received a call from my Aunt Beatriz, my mother's sister. She was nervous, speaking quickly. Helena, dear, I need to tell you something. Your mother called me yesterday and said you used inheritance money from your grandmother to buy a house. Is that true? My heart sank. Aunt Pino, it's not true. I didn't use any money from Grandma. I didn't even know that money existed. I imagined, she sighed with relief. Because, dear, I was there when your grandmother made the will. She divided everything equally between you and Melissa. There was no special clause about first house or anything like that. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. What? Yes, Aunt Beatrice continued. Your grandmother left half for you and half for Melissa. And that money was already distributed 2 years ago, when she passed away. You received your part, Melissa received hers. There is no special fund. So where did my family get this story from? My voice was trembling. Aunt Beatrice was silent for a long moment. Helena, I didn't want to have to tell you this, but before your grandmother passed away, your father tried to convince her to change the will. He wanted her to leave more to Melissa, because you were already well off and Melissa needed more help. What? I could barely speak. Your grandmother refused. She was very clear. She said she loved both granddaughters equally, and that it would be unfair to favor one over the other. Your father didn't take it well. They fought badly because of it. I felt nauseous. Aunt, why didn't you ever tell me this? Because I didn't think it was relevant, she said, and her voice was loaded with guilt. Your grandmother kept the will equal, so I thought the matter was closed. But now, hearing your mother invent this story about a special fund. Helena, I think they're trying to rewrite reality. After I hung up, I sat on the kitchen floor for almost an hour, trying to process everything. My father had tried to manipulate my grandmother to favor Melissa, and when that didn't work, he simply invented a different story. That's when the registered letter arrived. Now, 3 days after that call with Aunt Beatrice, I was sitting in the office of Dr. Patricia Mendonça, a lawyer specializing in family law that Carla had recommended. Dr. Patricia was a woman of about 50 years old, gray hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, red-framed glasses, and a posture that radiated competence. Let me see if I understood correctly, she said after I had explained the whole situation. Your parents are claiming that you used an inheritance fund that was specifically intended for your sister to buy her first house. Correct. Yes. And you have proof that you bought your house entirely with your own money? Yes. 7 years of bank statements, proof of every deposit in savings, documentation of every transfer for the down payment and financing. She nodded, taking notes. And about this supposed fund. Do you have any documentation? No, because I didn't even know it existed. But my aunt, who was present when my grandmother made the will, told me there is no special fund. The inheritance was divided equally between me and my sister, and was already distributed 2 years ago. Dr. Patricia raised her eyebrows. Would your aunt be willing to testify to that? I think so. Great. I'll need a copy of your grandmother's will. Do you have access to that? I shook my head no. But my aunt should have it. She was the executor. Perfect. We'll request it. She paused, studying my face. Helena, I need to be honest with you. Cases like this, involving family members, are emotionally devastating, even if we win. I know I interrupted. I know I'll never have the same relationship with them again. But I can't let them take from me something I achieved alone. I can't. She nodded, with an expression of understanding. Then let's fight. The following weeks were a blur of documents, meetings, and less sleep. Dr. Patricia worked fast. She got a copy of my grandmother's will through Aunt Beatrice, who not only confirmed there was no special fund, but also offered to testify about my father's attempt to manipulate the will. But the worst was still to come. One morning, I woke up to my phone exploding with notifications. Messages from people I barely knew, some I didn't even remember adding on social media. I opened Instagram and immediately understood what was happening. Melissa had made a post. A long, elaborate, and completely false post about how I had stolen her dream. Sometimes, the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you most. My older sister always had everything. The intelligence, the career, our parents' recognition. And yet, it wasn't enough. When my grandmother passed away, she left a fund specifically so that I could buy my first house. It was her dream to see me established, to have a home of my own. But my sister, who already earns 3 times more than I do, who already had all the opportunities in the world, decided to use that money to buy a house for herself. When I questioned her, she denied it. She has receipts, she says. Papers can be forged. What can't be forged is the truth. She took from me the only chance I had to leave our parents' house. And now I have to see her living in the place that should be mine, knowing I'll never be able to achieve something like that on my own. Family should be sacred. But some people only think of themselves. #betrayed, #family not always, #my stolen dream. There were hundreds of comments. Hundreds of people who didn't know me, who didn't know the real story, calling me selfish, a thief, a terrible sister. Someone had even commented, people like this should be sued and lose everything. What a horrible person. I felt bile rise in my throat. With trembling hands, I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Dr. Patricia. She responded in less than 10 minutes. This is defamation. Save everything. It will be useful in the case. Oh. Carla came to spend the night with me after I told her about the post. You need to defend yourself, she said, sitting on my living room sofa, holding a cup of tea she wasn't even drinking. Post your version, show the receipts. I can't, I replied, hugging my knees. Dr. Patricia said not to say anything publicly while the case is ongoing. Everything I say can be used against me. So you're just going to let people think you're a thief? What else can I do? My voice came out more broken than I intended. If I defend myself, I look guilty. If I do nothing, I look guilty. There's no way to win. Carla moved closer and hugged me tight. You'll get through this. We'll prove the truth in court, and those idiotic people who are judging you without knowing the full story will have to swallow their words. I wanted to believe her. But that night, lying in the bed of the house I had fought so hard to achieve, all I could feel was crushing loneliness. My family had abandoned me. People I didn't even know well hated me. And the house that should represent my independence and success now seemed like a prison. The process officially began 3 weeks later. My parents, represented by an expensive lawyer that Melissa had probably gotten financing from the parents themselves to pay for, filed a lawsuit alleging misappropriation of family resources and requesting that the house be transferred to Melissa's name. The first hearing was a surreal experience. Seeing my own parents sitting on the other side of the room with their lawyers, looking at me as if I were a criminal, was more painful than anything I could have imagined. Melissa was there too, wearing a simple black dress that made her look fragile and victimized. She avoided my gaze the entire time. Their lawyer, Dr. Fernando Costa, opened by presenting their case. He talked about family traditions, about promises made, about broken expectations. He painted a portrait of Melissa as a lost young woman who had finally found hope in her grandmother's promise, only to have it ripped away by her greedy sister. It was hard not to scream, not to stand up and yell that it was all wrong, that it was all lies. But Dr. Patricia had prepared me for this. They're going to try to provoke you, she had said days before. They're going to try to make you lose your composure. Don't fall for it. In court, whoever keeps calm wins. So I sat there, with my hands clasped in my lap, trying to breathe slowly, while their lawyer painted me as a villain. When it was Dr. Patricia's turn to speak, she was surgical. Your Honor, she began, addressing the judge, what we have here is not a case of misappropriation. It's a case of creative fiction. The plaintiff alleges the existence of a specific fund for purchasing property, but doesn't present a single document that proves it. No will, no deed, no bank record. Nothing. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. On the other hand, my client has 7 years of meticulous documentation proving that every penny used in the purchase of her house came from her own work. Bank statements, transfer receipts, tax returns, everything traceable, everything verifiable, everything legal. Dr. Fernando tried to intervene, but the judge silenced him with a gesture. Dr. Patricia continued. Furthermore, we have the will of the party's deceased grandmother, which clearly establishes that the inheritance was divided equally between the 2 granddaughters. There is no mention of any special fund. There is no conditional clause. Just a fair and equal division. She then looked directly at my parents. What is happening here, Your Honor, is an attempt to rewrite history. An attempt to punish my client for having been successful through her own merit. And this cannot be allowed. The judge blinked slowly, looking at the documents before him. Did the defense present the original will? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, Dr. Patricia responded, handing over a folder, as well as a sworn statement from the executor, Beatriz Ferreira, sister of the party's mother, confirming that the fund alleged by the prosecution does not exist. I saw my mother pale. My father clenched his fists. The judge leafed through the documents in silence for a few minutes that seemed like hours. I'll need time to analyze all the evidence, he finally said. Next hearing in 6 weeks. Until then, the status quo remains. The house continues in the defendant's name. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. When we left the courthouse, Melissa caught up with me in the hallway. Helena, she called, and her voice was loaded with an emotion I couldn't identify. I stopped, but didn't turn completely. What, Melissa? Why are you doing this? She asked, and now there were tears in her voice. Why can't you just do the right thing and give me the house? I finally turned to face her. The right thing. I repeated slowly. Melissa, the right thing would be for you to recognize that this house is mine. That I worked 7 years for it. That there is no fund. But Grandma wanted me to have a house, she insisted. Grandma wanted both of us to have good lives, I corrected. And she left us equal resources for that. What you did with your part of the inheritance is not my fault. She was speechless. You know about the inheritance. I do. Aunt Beatrice told me everything, including about how Dad tried to make Grandma change the will to favor you. The tears that were threatening to fall finally ran down her face. I didn't know that. Of course you didn't know, I replied, and there was a bitterness in my voice that I didn't try to hide. Because you never bothered to know the truth. You just believed the version our parents told you, the version where I'm the villain and you're the victim. Helena. No, I interrupted. It's over, Melissa. You chose to believe a lie instead of trusting me. You posted that false story on social media and let hundreds of people attack me. You and our parents are suing me for something I didn't do. So no, I'm not going to do the right thing and give you my house. Because the right thing is to fight for what's mine. And I walked away, leaving her crying in the hallway. Dr. Patricia was waiting for me at the exit. You did well in there, she said as we walked to the parking lot. You kept your composure. I don't know how much longer I'll be able to do that, I admitted. She stopped and looked at me seriously. Helena, you need to understand something. Cases like this are rarely just about what's being officially disputed. They're about power, control, and family dynamics of decades. You're not just fighting for the house. You're fighting for the right to be seen, to be valued, to have your achievements recognized. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. And that will require more from you than just presenting documents, she continued. It will require you to confront truths about your family that you might prefer not to face. I know, I whispered. And I really did. Because at that moment, finally, I was beginning to understand. No matter what I did, it would never be enough for my parents. Melissa would always be the priority. She would always be the daughter who needed more help, while I would be the daughter who was already fine. The difference is that now, for the first time in my life, I wasn't willing to accept that quietly. The 6 weeks until the next hearing were the longest of my life. Melissa's post continued circulating. People I barely knew stopped me on the street to give their unsolicited opinions. A coworker even asked me, in front of other colleagues, if it was true that I had stolen my sister's house. Rodrigo, who had witnessed part of the drama unfold, was incredibly supportive. He even confronted the colleague who had questioned me, firmly explaining that it was none of her business and that I was being victimized by defamation. But the worst wasn't the strangers. It was the people who knew me. My cousin Anna, daughter of my uncle Jorge, my father's brother, called me 2 weeks after the first hearing. Helena, what's happening? She asked, and her voice was confused, worried. Aunt Denise called me saying you used money that was Melissa's to buy a house. Is that true? I had to explain everything again. The 7 years of savings, the equal will, the lack of any document proving the existence of such a fund. Anna was silent for a long moment after I finished. Helena, I don't know what to say. This is crazy. I know. My father is on Uncle Eduardo's side in this, she said quietly. He believes their version. I felt my heart sink a little further. Does everyone in the family believe it? Not everyone. Aunt Beatrice is on your side, obviously. And my mother, too. She said she's known you since you were little and knows you would never do something like that. But it's complicated, you know? The family is divided. Divided. As if it were a matter of opinion and not documented facts. That night, sitting alone in my house, I looked around at the rooms I had decorated with so much care. The bookshelf that Rodrigo helped me assemble. The curtains that Carla helped me choose. The small backyard garden that I was starting to cultivate. Everything seemed tainted now. Contaminated by the fight, by the betrayal, by the pain. I wondered, not for the first time, if it was worth it. If it wouldn't be easier to simply give up, sell the house, give the money to Melissa and move on. But then I remembered Dr. Patricia's words. You're not just fighting for the house. You're fighting for the right to be seen. And I realized that yes, it was worth it. Because if I gave up now, I would be confirming everything my family had always believed about me. That my feelings didn't matter, that my achievements were less valuable, that I existed only to make Melissa's life easier. No, not anymore. 2 days before the second hearing, something unexpected happened. I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, thinking it might be another stranger calling to attack me because of Melissa's post. But something made me answer. Hello. Helena. It was a male voice, older, that seemed vaguely familiar. This is Arthur. Arthur Souza. Your grandfather's friend. It took me a second to process. Mr. Arthur? The accountant. That's right. He coughed. Look, I heard about the lawsuit your parents filed against you. And there's something you need to know. My heart started beating faster. What is it? I was your grandfather's accountant when he was alive, and I continued being your grandmother's after he passed away. I was the one who helped her organize the will. Yes, and your father approached me 3 times in the last 2 years of your grandmother's life. 3 times, Helena. Trying to convince me to suggest to her that it would be fairer to leave more to Melissa, because you were already established and Melissa needed help. I felt a chill down my spine. Did he try to bribe you? It wasn't a direct bribe, Arthur sighed. But he insinuated that I would be well rewarded if I guided your grandmother in the right direction. Obviously, I refused. Your grandmother was my client, and my loyalty was to her. But after she passed away, well, I didn't think it was relevant to mention. And why are you telling me now? Because I heard he's claiming in court that there was a special fund. And that's a lie, Helena. I was there when the will was made. I participated in the drafting. There was nothing about a special fund. Everything was divided half and half, exactly as your grandmother wanted. My voice trembled when I asked, "Would you be willing to testify about this?" "That's why I'm calling," Mr. Arthur said firmly. "I think you're being wronged, and I have the records to prove it. If your lawyer wants to call me as a witness, I'm available." After I hung up, I immediately called Dr. Patricia. She answered on the second ring. "I just received a very interesting call," I said, and for the first time in weeks, there was hope in my voice. The second hearing was completely different from the first. This time, we had Mr. Arthur as a witness. And he not only confirmed that the will was divided equally, but also revealed, under oath, about the 3 attempts by my father to manipulate the inheritance. I saw my father pale when Arthur began to speak. I saw my mother hold his hand tightly. Melissa looked between the two, clearly confused. Dr. Fernando tried to discredit Arthur, suggesting he was lying to favor me. But Dr. Patricia presented the complete accounting records. Everything documented, everything dated, everything verifiable. The judge leaned back in his chair, studying my father with an expression that was hard to decipher. "Mr. Eduardo," he finally said, "are you telling me you didn't know your mother-in-law's will had been divided equally?" My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I thought there was a special provision. "Based on what?" the judge interrupted. "Because so far, I haven't seen a single document that proves that claim. While the defense has presented the original will, witness statements, accounting records, and 7 years of bank statements from your daughter proving she bought the house with her own resources, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. "Mr. Eduardo, I'm going to ask you a direct question," the judge continued, and now there was a hardness in his voice. "Are you, or are you not, trying to force your daughter to transfer a property that she legally bought with her own money to your other daughter, based on a claim you cannot prove?" I saw my father swallow hard. We just want justice for Melissa. She deserves." "Deserves what?" The judge cut him off. "Deserves something that belongs to someone else?" "Mr. Eduardo, this isn't justice. This is appropriation." My mother began to cry softly. Melissa was pale, her hands trembling in her lap. The judge looked at Dr. Fernando. "Unless the plaintiff has any additional evidence that hasn't yet been presented, I'm inclined to close this case today." Dr. Fernando exchanged a desperate look with my parents. They talked in whispers for a few moments, and then he stood up. "Your Honor, we would like to request a recess to review our position." "Denied," the judge responded firmly. "We've had more than enough time. Either present evidence now, or I close the case." Dr. Fernando looked again at my parents. My father gave an almost imperceptible nod. "We have no additional evidence, Your Honor." The judge struck his gavel. "Then it's decided. The case is ruled without merit. The house remains in the name of the defendant, Helena Ferreira Santos, legally purchased with provably her own resources. Furthermore, I order that the plaintiff pay the court costs and defense attorney fees." And he paused, looking sternly at my parents. "I want it on record that unfounded legal actions like this waste justice system resources and cause unnecessary emotional damage. I hope the family can resolve their problems more maturely from now on." It was over. Dr. Patricia squeezed my shoulder gently. On the other side of the room, I saw Melissa collapse in tears. My mother hugged her, casting me a look that mixed anger and something that could be regret. My father didn't look at me even once. When we left the courthouse, there was a small group waiting. Carla, Rodrigo, Aunt Beatriz, and even Cousin Anna. "You did it," Carla said, hugging me tight. "You really did it." But while they celebrated, I looked back and saw my family leaving through the opposite door. Melissa still crying in my mother's arms. My father walking a few steps ahead, rigid. And I realized I had won the house, but lost the family. The question that kept echoing in my mind was, were they ever really my family? Or had I always been just the useful daughter, the one who didn't need attention, the one who could be sacrificed for Melissa's well-being? I didn't have an answer to that yet. But for the first time in my life, I had something that was unquestionably mine, and no one, not even the people who brought me into this world, could take that from me. That night, sitting on the sofa in my house, I received a message. It was from Melissa. I didn't know about Dad trying to change the will. I swear I didn't know. He told me a completely different version. He said Grandma had left verbal instructions that part of the money was for my first house. I believed him. Sorry for believing without checking. But I still think you could have helped me more over the years. You always had more than me. I read the message 3 times. It wasn't exactly an apology. It was a justification. A new attempt to make me feel guilty. You always had more than me. I had more because I worked more, studied more, sacrificed more. But for her, for our parents, that never mattered. In their minds, I had more because there was something inherently unfair in the universe that favored me, not because I had fought for every penny. I took a deep breath and typed a response. Melissa, I forgive you for believing the lie, but I won't apologize for building a better life through my own effort. I hope one day you understand the difference between someone having more because they worked for it and someone simply wanting more without being willing to do what's necessary. When you're ready to have that conversation for real, without victimization, I'll be here. But until then, I need distance. I sent it before I could regret it. She viewed it immediately, but didn't respond. And so, at that moment, I felt that a chapter of my life had closed. Not in the way I had imagined, with reconciliation and hugs and promises to be a better family from now on, but in the only way it could be, with truth, boundaries, and the acceptance that some relationships cannot be saved, no matter how much you want them to be. As night fell outside, I walked through the house I had almost lost. I touched the walls I had painted, sat on the sofa I had chosen, looked out the window at the garden that was beginning to bloom. And for the first time in months, I could breathe completely. The fight wasn't over yet. I knew that. There would be more difficult conversations, more moments of pain, more choices about how to deal with a family that had betrayed me so deeply. But today I had one. And that for now was enough. 3 months after the trial, I received an unexpected call from Melissa. Helena. Her voice was different. More mature, perhaps. Or just tired. Melissa? I responded, neutral. I need to tell you something. She paused, breathing deeply. Our parents lost the house. My stomach tightened. What? They took out a huge loan to pay the lawyer's fees and court costs. They thought they were going to win and have your house to compensate. When they lost, they couldn't pay. The bank foreclosed on the mortgage. I was silent, processing. Where are they living? In a small rented apartment. 2 bedrooms. Her voice got even lower. Helena, I'm also living there. Because I have nowhere else to go. And it's hell. They fight all the time. My dad blames my mom for supporting the idea of the lawsuit. My mom blames him for lying about the fund. And they both blame me for causing all this. You didn't cause anything, I said automatically. They created this lie. I know that now. She sniffled, and I realized she was crying. Helena, I was an idiot. I spent my whole life believing I deserved more just because. Just because. Because they made me believe that. But the truth is that you always worked hard, and I never wanted to do the same. And now I'm 29 years old, living with our parents in a tiny apartment with no career, no house, nothing. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, some kind of poetic justice. But all I felt was a sad emptiness. What do you want from me, Melissa? Nothing, she said quickly. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I wanted you to know that I understood. I finally understood what you tried to tell me at the courthouse. And that. I'm sorry. Really. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed you to know. After I hung up, I stared at the phone for long minutes. The revenge I had imagined in my darkest moments never involved my parents losing their house. I never wanted that. But life, apparently, had its own sense of irony. 2 weeks later, I organized a dinner at my house. Just the people who really mattered. Carla, Rodrigo, Aunt Beatriz, Cousin Anna, and Mr. Arthur, who had become an unlikely friend. A toast. Carla raised her wine glass to Helena, who fought for what was hers and won. To Helena, everyone repeated. But Mr. Arthur added something. And a toast to honesty. Because in the end, it's the only thing that really matters. As we talked, laughing and sharing stories. I looked around the table and realized this was my real family. Not the people who shared my blood, but those who chose to stand by my side when everything fell apart. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the front step of my house, looking at the stars. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Melissa. I started working at a store. It's not a big deal, but it's a start. You were right about everything. Thank you for not giving up on fighting, even when we gave up on you. I smiled sadly and typed, I'm happy for you, Melissa. Really. Good luck. I didn't say I forgave her completely. I didn't offer financial help or a room in my house. I didn't pretend we could be sisters again overnight. But I wished her well. And that, I realized, was the most I could offer at the moment. The best revenge, I discovered, wasn't seeing my parents lose their house. It wasn't seeing Melissa recognize her mistakes. It was simply living well. Building a life I loved, surrounded by people who valued me, in a house that was unquestionably mine. It was waking up every day without that weight on my chest, without that voice in my head saying I would never be enough. It was looking in the mirror and finally, liking the person I saw there. 6 months after the trial, Dr. Patricia called me. Helena, I have news. Your parents took down the defamatory post that Melissa made, and she published a retraction. I opened Instagram for the first time in months, and there it was. A few months ago, I made a post about my sister that wasn't true. I based it on incorrect information and caused damage to her reputation without verifying the facts. The truth is that my sister bought her house with her own money, the fruit of years of work and savings. I was wrong, and I apologized publicly. Sometimes, the stories we tell ourselves are more comfortable than the truth. But everyone deserves the truth, especially the people we love. I closed the app and didn't open it again for weeks. 1 year after the trial, something unexpected happened. Aunt Beatrice called me emotional. Helena, dear, I need to tell you something. Eduardo approached me yesterday. My whole body tensed. And he cried, Helena. For the first time in decades, I saw my brother-in-law cry. He said he destroyed his own family out of pride. That he can't sleep at night thinking about what he did to you. He wants to try to fix things. I was silent for so long that she asked, Helena, are you still there? I whispered. Aunt B, I don't know if I can. I understand, dear. I'm not asking you to forgive or forget. I just thought you should know. What you do with this information is your choice. After I hung up, I thought for hours. My father had hurt me in ways that might never completely heal. He had chosen one daughter over the other. He had lied. He had taken me to court. But he was also human. Flawed. Broken in his own way. I didn't call back immediately. I didn't run into his arms saying all was forgiven. But 3 weeks later, I sent a short message. Dad, I heard you want to talk. I'm not ready for a complete reconciliation yet. But maybe eventually we could have coffee. Just the two of us. No lies, no expectations. Just honesty. If you're willing to do that, let me know. He responded in minutes. I'm willing to do anything you allow, Helena. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the father you always deserved. Even if you decide it's too late. It wasn't a fairy tale happy ending. Maybe it never would be. But it was real. And true. And possible. Today, 2 years after that fateful day when I received the legal notification, I wake up in my house, which is still mine, will always be mine, and look out the window at the garden I cultivated with so much care. The rose bushes I planted are blooming. The small stone path I built leads to a wooden bench where I usually read on Sundays. There's a bird feeder that Rodrigo gave me as a birthday present. Inside the house, each room tells a story of new beginnings. The living room where I almost collapsed holding that notification is now a space of peace. The bedroom I painted alone, crying with anger and frustration, now welcomes me every night. Melissa and I aren't close, but we exchange messages occasionally. She's taking a technical course in accounting. She works part-time and studies the rest of the time. For the first time in her life, she's building something with her own hands. My parents and I meet for coffee once a month. They're still uncomfortable encounters, full of heavy silences and careful words. But they're honest. And that's more than we had for 30 years. I learned that family isn't blood. It's choice. It's loyalty. It's presence in difficult moments. I learned that some battles, no matter how painful, need to be fought. Not for revenge, but for dignity. And I learned that the greatest victory isn't proving you're right. It's discovering who you are when everything falls apart and still choosing to get up. My house continues to be mine. But more important than that, I continue to be mine too. And no one ever again will take that from me.